When do I repair or replace? We've all seen how we decline. We all know how we want to push those things off, and I think a lot has been said about how to do that. But when we get down to it, which one do you fix first? Do you fix the brick sewer that has 3 or 4 gallons per minute of II coming through? Do you fix the pipe collapse or the broken joint, the slip joint, misaligned joint? What's the ovality of the pipe? So we really have to have standards. Just like we have standards in the pavement business, we need standards, and we are having those standards in the sewer business. We don't have all the money that the City of Houston has. City of Houston, you may or may not know, at the height of their inspection program, 100 TV rigs on the job using these standards to go ahead and evaluate. We don't really have those benefits, and I think there's a number of other cities that are trying to do a shortcutting of that. Standards for pavement, there's a number of standards. The one that's shown on the left of your screen is from Australia. The middle paver, clearly with their segments and looking at small areas of that. And on the right, some of the standards that Mike Palmer is using over the UK. And really, the defining of your decision curves, modeling the logic of that, whether it's pavement or whether it's sewer or water. A number of these tools are now coming out to have the indices, to have the conditions, to have that performance information put directly in, so that when you're looking at storing information, you have a place to put it. And then also for linear information, it's not just the last time it was inspected, but it's the history of that. And in fact, this screen is not only showing today's condition, it's actually forecasting out what the condition would be in the year 2000. So I think a lot of those tools are good. How much ongoing investment is required? Well, the first thing you have to know is before you can really project is what you did. And I think cities like Indianapolis and Atlanta and some of the other folks that are doing activity-based costing to the asset really know. And the trick is to actually do costing to the physical asset and have the discipline to do that. I will say that the number of work orders completed in Indianapolis compared to before and after privatization, they are now completing double the number of work orders to that system right now. And as you take a look at historical events, knowing historically against linear assets, I think is very important. That's going to be helping to drive the budget. Yeah, I hate to say the word need to. How much do we need? The reality is, gee, we have $100,000 to spend. Where should I spend it? And we have a fiduciary responsibility in the community to go ahead and have that information there. And then also, it's not just how much is spent, but are we doing the right method of rehabilitation? We have some pavement things up here, but in the water or sewer area, how much should I be doing for point repair and situform, slip lining, pipe bursting? We have I think at last count, 46 different methods of pipeline rehabilitation for the sewer business. What I need to value my assets? Well, you know, cities are doing that all for different reasons. In the city of Adelaide, they decided that they would go ahead and value their assets. But there is now a government regulation, it's called AAS 27, that requires all cities to inventory and account for their assets. And so the asset valuation of an asset is the bottom up is now creeping out of the financial area and is now looking to become a burden. I know at APWA, just in Las Vegas, there was actually a Sunday session that went through how do you value infrastructure assets. It is, after all, the biggest number that we have on our balance sheet. I think a couple of things that I've seen, I see a lot of traditional systems where, gee, we have a separate system that does pavement and a separate system that does this and a separate system to do water system, and they typically don't talk to each other. And so really there's been a couple of changes in the IT just over the last few years. In '95, if we looked at it, most of the IT, the utility IT departments surveyed, said that technology was the major thing. 41% said that technology, whether it's setting up the network or implementing Windows 95 or Windows NT environment. And look at the very last thing, business process, really how's the business done. And you know, we haven't really talked about Y2K yet. Ted Koppel had a really nice program on that last night. 97, we're starting to see some shifts in the responses for that. And finally, in 99, next year, what's forecast is that 48% are going to focus on the business process. And so really what we're finding is that the separate islands of automation that we've been having out there really is no longer the business model that people are going for. In fact, what they're really looking at is again, back to a return on asset. They're looking at linking the revenue that we get from a customer. We're looking at the billing and the permitting and the licensing and the properties that are connected. You know, Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville MSD, major part of their GIS was not just to go ahead and put in the parcels as a layer and the sewers as a layer, but because of the rehabilitation requirements, to actually know the number of property lines connected to individual pipes. That's the number one thing you need to rehabilitate. Well, not only do you need to have the revenue from customers, but you need to have the systems that track expenses, the activity-based cost, the service order request, the timesheet reporting. Yes, timesheet reporting is not a financial application anymore. That is an asset expense because we're looking to where people and what assets people spend time on. And we're also looking at a basket of applications to look at the inventory and the asset valuation, and also to take a look at the decision port systems and the land itself. So the business model of utilities is undergoing a major rethinking. And I'm telling you this because this is exactly the model that investor-owned water and sewer and the privatization companies are pursuing. This is the presentation that they make to your city council. And you know, when they look at return on asset, they look at utilities as financial institutions and banks. And they're now looking because they want to see the customer, and they want to see where that customer is connected. And because they know the customer's revenue, because they know the cost of serving that customer and services, and because they know the assets that support it, they are now pursuing what is popularly known in the banking business as a customer profitability system. So what if my utility was for sale? Well, I think you should start the bidding at 2 times revenue because that's really the cost that people are going for nowadays. In summary, I don't think it's a problem today. I don't think there's any major panic, but there should be a sense of urgency. And I think, 1, you should develop a game plan for managing your assets. 2, you should track your business like your competition does. And your competition is out there, and they're very well funded in many cases. And you know, just like publicly traded companies that report to their shareholders, I know that you also report to your ratepayers. And that's the most important group that I think that you owe that fiduciary responsibility to. That's my conclusion, and I'm able to take any questions that you'd like before
Chuck,
Mike.
Thank you very much. And we have just a little time before our next presentation, and probably the most asked question that we have of all the ones that have turned in. This has been repeated several times, but this one came from someone who said, we know that Indianapolis outsourced their maintenance 3 years ago. What's happened since this took place? Is the city of Indianapolis getting less maintenance and a lower level of production they were getting prior to privatization?
Okay, yeah, good question. You know, I've actually been to meetings, and they said, don't mention Indianapolis, because we don't really want to hear that. But I will tell you that the team that outsourced Indianapolis was a consortium, and that included JMM Operational Services, United Water, Lane A's, and also the water company, Indianapolis Water, who just recently, Indianapolis Water was purchased, acquired, so they're now part of NIPSCO, the electric company there. That team has now been successful in Milwaukee and Atlanta, and having that business model placed. And what they've been able to do is they've been able to take statistics that the city's been putting together and provide that into their executive and city council meetings to present what they're doing. The other thing that they've done is they've had a consistent and sustainable program for capital. And I think that's a sheet off the hymn book that we all should watch.
Thank you.
Great.